Welcome to Linux as a Desktop Operating System, Part 1. I'm Patrick with Linux Consulting. I've been an application and database developer for 20 plus years. I use Linux and other operating systems on a daily basis. I think it would be beneficial to tell you about Linux and why you should consider using it. This presentation is the first of several presentations about Linux and Linux software that will help you get started. If you've already heard about Linux, you may believe that it's only for server computers. Linux is now for everyone that uses a computer. If you have an Android device, you're already using a derivative of Linux. Linux is a Unix-like operating system. Before Windows Server existed, Unix was the server operating system of choice for many businesses. Since the only advertising you see is for Windows and Mac, you may have come to believe that those are the only options available. The biggest reason you don't see advertising for Linux is because it's a community-driven effort and the resources go towards creating high-quality software. There are important advantages with Linux over other operating systems. A few of those advantages are security, stability, and price. I will come back to these points later. In this first video, I will demonstrate how to install Linux on your computer. I will be using OpenSuSE Linux OS. I have switched over to a VirtualBox virtual machine. Given the virtual machine 12 gigabytes of hard drive space and 2 gigabytes of memory, the basic Linux installation doesn't require a lot of resources. I'm going to unpause this machine now so you can watch the installation process from the start. In this first screen, all we have to do is click the down arrow to select installation and then press enter. This part of the installation process is going to load the installer and then look for hardware devices and load the hardware drivers. I'm going to skip over most of this and come back just before the next step begins. So this is the main installation window, and this is where you're going to start making entries to configure your installation. The first thing Linux is doing is determining if there's a network available, and then it's going to update the installer itself if it can. And then it's going to see if it can find repositories, which are sites on the internet that have updated files. And then finally, we get to the welcome screen. In the welcome screen, you can read the license agreement, and I recommend doing so before moving on. Once you're done reading the license agreement, click Next. Now the installer has looked for repositories and wants to know if you want to use them in the installation. You will want to do so because that will install more updated versions of files than what exist on the installation media. So click Yes. So this screen, list of online repositories, suggests 4 of them, and that's all you need, so click Next. And at this time, the installer is reaching out to those repositories and configuring them in the installer. In this step, we're going to select a system role. In our case, we want to install a desktop environment, but as you can see, there are 3 desktop environments and 2 server environments. I'm going to select the GNOME desktop and then click Next. And then in this next screen, the installer has suggested a partitioning scheme. I don't want to use that one, so I'm going to click Expert Partitioner, and I'll go ahead and start with existing partitions. I will select the hard disk SDA in this case, then click the Partitions tab, and then click Add Partition. Now the first partition I'm creating will be the swap partition, and it's used for virtual memory as well as storing the hibernation state. So I'm going to make this 2.01 gigabytes. And the reason for that is I gave the machine 2 gigabytes of memory, so this is just a little bit larger than that, and it will be used for hibernation. And I'll click Next, tell it it's the swap partition, click Next, verify that the partition will be formatted and mounted the way I want, click Next, and that's the first one. Then we'll click Add Partition. And for our simple installation, we'll just keep the maximum size. As you see, it's gone down by 2 gigabytes. And click Next. We'll tell the installer that we're installing the operating system. Click Next. And for this installation, I'm going to use the X4 file system, but as you can see here, you have several choices of file systems. And then the mount point will be slash. And slash means the root mount point. And if we were to add any more partitions, they would show up in the file system under this mount point. So I'll click Next. And here's our 2 partitions. So I'll click Accept. And now the system's warning that it may not be able to boot, but this has to do with a UEFI BIOS, and we're not using that for this system, so I'm just going to click Yes to continue. Now it's showing a summary of what it's going to do as far as partitions, and I'll click Next. Now the machine has looked up a time server, and we just need to tell it what time zone we're in. Leave hardware clock set to UTC and click Next. And then enter your username. And enter your password and confirm by entering it a second time. Now we're going to use this same password for the system administrator. The system administrator is also referred to as the root user. Now, I don't want automatic logins because I want to log into the machine every time I need to start using it. And I click Next. And then we get a list of what will be installed. And in this case, because I have an external firewall, I'm going to disable the internal firewall. And then I'll click Install and then confirm by clicking Install again, and the installation process has begun. This is going to take several minutes, so I'm going to skip forward to where the machine has rebooted and the login screen appears. After booting, this is the login screen. So I'm going to click my name, enter a password, and the machine, I've logged into the desktop environment, which is the GNOME desktop environment. Now, before going any further, the screen size is kind of small, so I'm going to increase that by clicking the Start button, the Settings button. I'll go down to Devices, select Displays, select Resolution, and change this to going to go with 1920 by 1200. Close this window, click Apply. You may not see anything now, so I have to start the recording over, but using the full screen size that I've selected. This resolution will give us more room to work. I'm going to double click on the display's title bar to put it into a window for the future, and then close it. There are a few more things I want to do in order to prepare this machine for future videos. The first thing I'll do is click on Activities and Firefox, and in the search bar, I'll type in -to-dock, and then select the GNOME shell extensions -to-dock. For this first round, I will click here to allow browser extensions to be installed. Click Continue, click Add, and confirm that I got it. Then I'll press F5 in the browser window to refresh it, and then the power slider will show up. I'll click it to turn it on, click Install to install the add-on, and what you'll see is over at the left, the dash has now shown up, so we don't have to click Activities to get to it. Next, I want to change some settings that I prefer, so I'll type in Tweak, which is the GNOME Tweak tool, and down at Windows, I'll click Windows and turn on Maximize and Minimize buttons, and then I'll click on Extensions, click the gear icon for -to-dock, turn off Intelligent Auto Hide because I don't like the dash to be hidden. Click on Appearance, select dots for the window counter indicators, and those are what you see in blue right now, the little dots here. Click on the settings icon, click to customize the indicator style, click the color button, select yellow, click the select button, close that window, and then I'll click on customize opacity and set it to fixed, and then put the slider at around 50%, and then I can close the -to-dock window, close the tweaks window, and now this desktop is set up for future presentations. I'm not going to go into great detail at this time, but I want to point out that several applications have been installed. So on the dash, I'm going to click Show Applications, and then we get two screens of applications that were installed by default. GIMP, Firefox, LibreOffice, and some of these other applications are full-featured applications, not stripped-down versions. In future videos, I'll come back to many of these applications and show you what you can do within Linux. I've already opened Firefox once, but I'll open it again. And I'll open a word processor. I can put these into Windows. What I want to show you is with just 2 gigabytes of memory and 12 gigabytes of hard drive space, these software applications are performing very well. Another more popular operating system will run with 2 gigabytes of memory, but barely, and it won't even install unless you have 32 gigabytes of hard drive space. This utility that I've just opened shows the amount of space used by the operating system and all of the default software that got installed. So I gave the operating system 12 gigabytes of hard drive space to use, and it's only using 5.2 gigabytes of that, leaving 4.2 gigabytes available for your files. This concludes the demonstration on installing a Linux operating system. In about 1/2 hour, we have an operating system with all current updates and several very useful full-featured applications. With some other operating systems, you would now have to purchase additional applications if you want more than just the most stripped-down software. I will publish additional videos that demonstrate the software and utilities that are included with the installation and how you can use Linux in your day-to-day work. Thank you for taking your time to watch this video. I hope to see you soon.